Hey, all you Glass House listeners. Today we have a crossover episode where we get to feature another podcast in our Lifeway network, and it's by Chuck Peters. Chuck is the next-gen leader here at Lifeway, and if I had one word to describe Chuck, it's dynamo.
I would have said kind of calm.
He is full of energy and so much passion for what he does, which is reach the next generation for Christ. He is a highly knowledgeable, but also very practical speaker. And I think you're going to love this discussion. On this particular episode, Chuck talks about reaching all the generations, which we thought is the perfect episode to show here because it's not just for next-gen workers, which that podcast normally is aimed at, but really for everybody. Mm-hmm. And Chuck is an amazing host, and he has Jana Magruder on the show.
Yep. And I did want to clarify with you, the name of this podcast is ETCH, in case people want to find it. It's the ETCH podcast.
Yes.
But yeah, he has Jana Magruder on here, and she is exploring the unique characteristics of each generation. So she talks about the silent generation, the baby boomers, the Gen X, the millennials, the Gen Z, the Gen Alpha, which all that interests me because I'm like, I don't even know the difference in all those things. How generational traits impact ministry approaches, differences in communication styles across generations, and then finally discipleship strategies tailored to each generation's need and preferences.
You mean that different generations communicate differently?
I believe so.
I have not experienced that in our home.
Huh. You mean when they say bruh?
Yeah, I got a Father's Day note yesterday, and my 17-year-old son, he says, keep up the good work, brother.
Brother.
B-R-O-T-H-A.
All right.
Oh, you're going to love this episode. Chuck and Janet together are a power team, and I hope it'll maybe get you to pass it on to your next gen leaders also, because ETCH, E-T-C-H, is a great podcast. Check it out.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the ETCH Next Gen Ministry Podcast. I'm glad you're here today because I'm with a really good friend of mine and ministry partner who we have worked together for many, many years in kids ministry and now in the Next Gen space. Her name is Jana Magruder. Jana, welcome to the ETCH Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Now, so many of you know Jana because of her leadership and involvement at Lifeway in our Next Gen team. At our ETCH conference, people have seen you. Jana speaks all around the country and leads workshops and breakouts, and we're going to talk today about one of your new topics, which is about generations. Mm-hmm. But first, I want to hear a little bit about what you've been up to. So you and I have podcasted together. Podcasted, is that a thing? Is that a word?
Sure.
We've recorded many an episode of podcasts over the years on the Kids Ministry 101 podcast,
yes,
which we tag teamed and partnered with on that. But you have your own new podcast in the kids ministry space that our listeners who cross over into kids ministry must check out. It's called Kids Ministry Calling, and it's all about your calling to ministry. And although it's called kids ministry, a lot of it translates across into student and next gen space as well. So tell us a little bit about this podcast. So we have, always been together in our podcasting, and now we're working in separate lanes.
Yeah.
And I don't get to hear a whole lot of how it's going and what you're doing.
You're not listening?
I mean, I listen to the podcast. Sometimes I walk by. So here at Lifeway, we have a studio, right? And there's a big glass window where if you're here, you can look in and see. And so I often look in and see you recording, and I avoid the urge to knock on the glass and distract you because I know that would probably throw you off your game.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but I just know that I have that urge when I see that happening. I want to do that. So tell us a little bit about Kids Ministry Calling. Okay. How'd you get the name, and what's it all about?
Yeah. So when we decided to kind of divide and conquer in this area.
It's a good way to say that.
Kids Ministry 101 we did for at least 8 years, maybe more.
I think going back 10 years or more now.
10 years?
Yes, it's been a long time.
A long time. And there came a point where we decided, you know what? It's time to maybe sunset the 101 podcast and release you to kind of do this ETCH vision for reaching next gen leaders. And that left me kind of in the main host seat. And I was very much used to being, your co-host or frequent guest and that kind of thing. It's been a little bit of a learning curve, to sit in the main seat and carry it. I've had a lot of fun. It's stretched me. Yeah. I really enjoy planning and thinking of ways to, how can this podcast specifically ministry minister to kids ministry leaders, not just a fun idea here or there, although we have a lot of that.
Yeah.
But I want to make kids ministers feel seen and heard, and to encourage them to remember their calling. Because the truth is, next gen leadership in general, but I'll speak specifically for my kids ministry friends, it at times can be just thankless work.
Oh, yeah.
And you feel very unseen. And it's very discouraging.
It can be lonely.
It can be very lonely.
Sure.
Ministry in general can. And so I just want this podcast to be a place that we can come together and spur one another on, remind each other of the calling that that we originally had, that we need to cling to, knowing that God would not have called us to this work if he wasn't going to equip us and surround us.
That's right.
That's right. Absolutely. So we launched with a season called All the Hats of Kids Ministry.
Yeah, so you just finished recording season 2.
Just finished season 2.
The podcast launched in October. So we're really only a few months in.
Yeah.
So listeners, I want to encourage you, if you have not yet started listening to Kids Ministry Calling, go back to the beginning, find it wherever you listen to podcasts, and go back to season 1, episode 1, and listen all the way through. So that first season that you did was all about hats.
Yes.
So I asked you before we started recording, should I wear the hat or don't wear the hat?
Always.
So just as a setup, if nothing else, for this conversation. So tell us a little bit about the hats that you talked about in season 1.
Yeah, we know that we all got into ministry probably because you have some giftedness in one or two areas. For me, I loved working with kids, and I thought I was going to be able to do that when I got into children's ministry.
And the same with student ministry as well, right? A lot of it's preschool kids, student, middle school, high school. We get into, maybe we're serving as a volunteer, and there's something we find we're really good at. Like maybe you're really good at teaching the Bible to kids, and you're like, if this could be my job, how great would that be? Yeah. But you may not realize that there's a lot more to it than that, right? There's a lot of other hats you have to wear, like janitor hat and
and we go into
the
many
trainer
of
hat,
them.
the recruiter hat. Yes,
we go into many of the different hats, and so I invited basically a lot of my friends who are out in the world of ministry, in the trenches, doing great work week after week, and brought them in to sort of talk about their specialty. What is their favorite hat to wear? What is the most natural hat for them to wear? But also, what is it like when you don't get to wear that hat very often? You have to wear these other crazy hats that you don't like. So we did a lot of play around just the multifaceted nature of being in Next Gen ministry. And kids ministers have great stories of all the different ways that they have to wear hats. And so that was the first season. You know, we launched into VBS season in February. Have a whole series on that. We're right in the middle of March Biblical Literacy Month. We have some great guests, and so we're just rocking and rolling.
I love
having a ball.
I love the personality and the tone of the podcast. I feel like I'm sitting down to have a cup of coffee with you and whoever the guests are.
Yeah.
It's very conversational. It's enjoyable. It's super approachable and really practical. So listeners, if you are a next gen leader and you oversee kids leaders, encourage them to check out Kids Ministry Calling. It is phenomenal, and you should listen too, so you can share each episode with certain volunteers or parents or who knows who. So absolutely check it out. But so Jana, since we're talking about hats, I'm going to go to a hat question for you. So this now, not necessarily a metaphorical hat, but you, from time to time, you'll wear a ball cap or something, right?
I love a ball cap.
You've got, and so I know you have some different hats in your closet. I don't know all of them. Like, are you an Easter hat person?
Oh, no.
I
do have no bonnets.
I don't know about, not like a bonnet. I picture like, when I think of bonnet, I think like Little House on the Prairie kind of a thing, like a bonnet, you know.
But an Easter bonnet is kind of the big hats. No,
you're not not an Easter hat person. No. Okay. All right. So, of your hats. No, I'm not looking for, you don't have to be. I'm just curious because I mean,
like me a cowboy hat.
I was going to say, that's not the kind of thing that we talk about normally is, hey, what kind of hat do you wear on Easter, if one? But spring is here. And so as spring comes, I'm naturally drawn to that. Like, who knew? Maybe there was a story, but there's not. I digress. Not. You said cowboy hats and ball caps.
Yes, cowboy hat, ball cap. If I'm at the beach, I'll put on a sun hat.
Okay. Just to keep from getting too pink or burning.
Yeah.
Remember, so That's a whole other conversation. As a Gen Xer, we're talking today about generations. We're going to get to that.
Yep.
The way that you handle going to the beach or sitting in the sun by generations, I think there's a lot of distinctives. Like for me, as an Xer, it was you slather in baby oil and you burn yourself as much as you can.
Right.
Wearing a hat was never part of my strategy. Okay, hats. Back to your hats.
Okay.
How do you keep your hats in your closet? Do you hang them on hooks? Are they stacks of hats?
Stacks of hats.
How do you organize your hats? And then how do you decide which one to wear on a given day? Check out the Kids Ministry Calling podcast, and especially season 1 with all the hats, and then roll right into season 2.
Yeah, and I'll say another thing that we did in season 2 that we're pretty committed to sticking with is we have equipping episodes. So that's a new kind of episode. And this is directly in response to feedback that we've gotten from Next Gen leaders for us to provide content that they can directly share with their families or their volunteers. So, for example, we one of our VBS episodes was devoted to volunteers. And what do we want our volunteers to know?
Yeah.
And so that is meant for a VBS director or kids minister to put that link in an email, send it directly to their volunteers.
Share it out with a whole bunch of people.
We have some that's specifically for parents, so it's parent content that you can put in a newsletter, your weekly communication, on a blog post, on a social media square. So those are called equipping episodes.
Great.
So, yeah.
Very practical.
Very practical.
Well, today we're going to talk about some conceptual ideas around understanding generations. This is a different. This is a hat that we need to wear as ministry leaders. Is that of unifier, uniter, rallier, leader, bridge builder, and we need to be really adept at understanding who we're leading and how we're leading and who we are reaching and how we reach them. And there's a whole lot. You've done a lot of work, I know, to create a breakout session, the seminar that you lead on generations, understanding how they're different, maybe some strengths and weaknesses and preferences of the generations that we as ministry leaders, it would be valuable for us to know and understand that so that we can lead people well and do our ministry more effectively. So let's talk about some of the distinctives of the span of generations. There's a whole span of them that's in our church, right? I know that you say Next Gen ministry is really all gen ministry.
Yes, that's my new favorite way to talk about it, because here's the reality. If you're sitting in a kids minister role, student pastor role, any next gen ministry role, you are impacting multiple generations, not just the kids in your ministry.
Right, because we think we need to know Gen Z and Generation Alpha.
Right.
That's really what this podcast is based on, is understanding the unique needs of the generations we are ministering to.
And that's absolutely necessary.
But we really need to know the generations we're ministering with and through.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Because if you think about it, I have this very simple graphic, and I believe it's in Flip the Script. But it's kind of an eye-opening thing where you have the silhouette of a church, okay? And at the heart of it, you have kids and student ministry, your next gen ministry.
They're
okay?
the core of what we're trying to do.
The heartbeat of the church. But when you, so leaders, you are working with those two generations. But when you surround that with their families, so the parents, the grandparents, you're ministering to this whole other sphere of influence, let's say. Then you add to that all the volunteers that you're working with, and that might be student volunteers, that might be parent volunteers, but oftentimes there are other generations represented there too.
Yes.
And so really, if you look at it that way, you're reaching a large part of your church, and you're reaching every generation of your church. And I'm not sure that any other ministry leader can say they are working with beta babies, alpha kids, Gen Z teenagers, millennial parents, boomer grandparents. Let's squeeze in Gen X.
Yeah, let's not forget the Xers.
Gen Xers that kind of bridge all of that, that are certainly parents, grandparents, and volunteers.
Grandparents, and a
we
large
even have
part of
some
our volunteer
silence
pool.
at my church. Silent generations, elder generations. There's different titles but that oldest generation, they're still around. They're still teaching Sunday
and
school.
quite a lot teaching Sunday school, working with preschool and children, especially.
Yes, absolutely. And so we better, as next gen leaders, know all about that.
Yeah.
And there are nuances that could really help us know that the way we communicate, our expectations, our leadership styles can be nuanced and contextualized to those generations.
Yeah, and we need to also remember that we, whoever you are and whatever generation you fall into, that influences who you are, how you think, how you operate, and what preferences you have, and how you tend to lead. And so we need to be careful not to do, as a Gen X or a proud Gen Xer,
Yes.
not to just do everything from that perspective.
Right.
We need to be understanding, sensitive, and aware of the specific communication styles, learning styles of the other generations, so we can partner well without being frustrated or without frustrating them, right, on both sides. And if we don't understand, there can be a little bit of frustration that's introduced.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And some tensions that we want to avoid. Yeah. Okay, well, let's do a little survey. Now, I know there's a lot of different places out there you can go. Just in preparation for this conversation, I hopped on YouTube and different places and looked for people talking about the different generations. And there's a whole lot of resources out there. You've accessed several different places that you've gone to do your research. What are some of those places that you've looked, that if our listeners want to find out more, where they might go to do some research?
Yeah, I kind of, over the Christmas holidays, got a little bit obsessed over this.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I really love studying generations. And so the resources that I've pulled the most from are, of course, our Lifeway Research has a lot on this.
Yes.
So definitely check out lifewayresearch.com. We can link all these in the show notes.
Lifewayresearch.com.
That's right.
Yeah, it's a good place to go.
McCrindle is something that our team has looked a lot into. They do great generational research. They're actually Australia-based. And so it's interesting to see how, even though they're in Australia, a lot of our generational trends line up, which just shows a lot of consistency. And then one author that I have followed for many, many years is Dr. Jean Twenge, and she's the one that wrote iGen years ago. I remember reading it by the pool. My kids were little and thinking, oh my goodness, this woman is onto something. And she basically called everything that we're dealing with right now. So before Anxious Generation, which we've all been paying a lot of attention to by Dr. Jonathan Haidt, which is also one of my sources, Jean Twenge was sort of predicting that years and years ago. Her newest book is simply called Generations. And she it's a big old thick book, but she unpacks each of the generations and why some of the things are the way they are. And it's fascinating. And then, of course, places like Barna, a lot from our own Flip the Script research that we've done. Those are some of my references that I've drawn from.
Great. Good stuff. Good stuff. Okay, so let's do a quick overview of some of the characteristics of the different generations. And let me hear what you have to say, and then I'll see how I can dive into the conversation with you. So where do you want to start? Do you want to start with the youngest or with the oldest?
Why don't we start with the oldest?
Okay, let's do that.
Okay.
And so that would be our silent generation.
Yes, you can call them silent. Some call them builders or elders. They were born between 1925 and 1945, more or less. One thing I love to call out about this generation is that if you look at the most popular first names, okay, so if I was leading a conference, I would say, stand up if you have these names. Some of the names that are going to be in every room, like Robert, John, William, James, Charles.
Some of those are kind of timeless.
Richard, girls, Mary,
I'm like a
Dorothy.
third generation Charles, though.
Yeah, that's
right. So like that's been handed down.
Right, and some of these are coming back in style. Barbara, Patricia, Linda, Carol, a lot of these common names are pulling, these were the most popular names during that time. The reason why, and some of the fun facts are like in their generation, they were listening to records. The way they consumed media was at the cinema. You had to go to the theater. Yeah, absolutely.
For a nickel.
Exactly.
Or whatever it was.
I mean, a key hallmark of like what toy might define their generation would be a pair of roller skates. That kind of thing.
I hear the legend of the key of the roller skates.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
Which is completely foreign to the current generation.
Yeah, right, and so keep those names in mind, though, as we move to the boomer generation. Okay, so that's our next oldest generation.
Okay, so with that generation of people, Like I tend to think of, I mean, we kind of go to like strengths and weaknesses of these generations. Like that silent generation, they tend to be really loyal.
Yes.
Like these were the people who stayed in a company for 50 years and got the gold watch.
Yep.
Like these are very loyal people to either their brands or to their organizations. Many of them who are teaching Sunday school now have been doing it for 25 years, right? They tend to be, they stay.
Correct.
They stay with the church and they stay in a place.
They stay with the church. They highly respect the hierarchy of the pastor. Is the person who's going to be the controlling leader. That's the style that they're used to in companies, in the workforce, even in the church structure. That's what they're most used to.
And they tend to value things like respect.
Yes.
And because they're very respectful, they don't often tend to be super outspoken, this generation. So that silent generation, I know that like this is back when kids were supposed to be seen and not heard, right, by their greatest generation parents. But many of them are still, although they have a lot of good ideas, they may not be as forthcoming with those ideas. They may be more inclined to just follow the lead of the leader and kind of trust and respect you without making a bunch of noise.
Yeah.
Where
and there's just not as many of them, unfortunately. If you're blessed to still have this generation in your ministry, learn from them.
Yeah, there's a lot of wisdom there.
Yes, there's a lot of wisdom. So
they've raised kids and grandkids and great-grandkids
grandkids
at this point in time.
Yep.
And we, unfortunately, many of this generation churned out or retired from ministry around the time of COVID.
Yeah.
Right, because there was a season when the church shut down. It was very high risk for them to come back because of immune system issues and things like that. And so there was a season when these were the cornerstone of kids ministry, these leaders, and a lot of them really involved in student ministry, who we did lose several years ago. So again, if you still have this generation of leader, it could be helpful for us to understand their value of respect and how we communicate to them and how we engage with them, but also that they're very, very loyal.
Yes.
Great things. Okay. What's next?
Baby boomers.
Baby boomers.
Yes. Thank goodness for our baby boomers, 1946 to 1964. Going back to those names that I listed.
Okay.
Many of the baby boomers also have those names.
Okay. I think of like Robert and
Yes.
Lee.
Yes.
Some of those classic good names.
Yes. However, they were the generation that started naming their kids other names.
Other names.
Yes.
Huh, okay.
And the reason why I call that out, and we're not going to go into all of this, but I think sometimes Gen Z, for example, gets the reputation of being very individualistic.
Sure.
Well, that individualism, that hyper individualism started
a couple of generations earlier.
A few generations ago.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yes. And so that naming kind of freedom and getting outside of the lines a little bit of classic names, baby boomers kind of started that.
Huh.
So anyway, that's just something to keep in mind about the generation itself. Certainly we saw in this generation that a lot of the traditional rules were broken around marriage, premarital sex, divorce rates, gender roles and equality, all of those things. If you think about the 1960s and 70s, a lot of those things started changing.
Yeah.
And that goes back to that individualism trait that we see that started then. So it's not just a Gen Z thing. It's not just kids today and how individual they have to be in this hyper individualism. Those things were put into place years and years, decades ago.
And then you start to see some separation, maybe even within the cult, with the generation, where like coming out of in the '60s with everything from the Vietnam War, the hippie generation, and all that kind of stuff that came out near the end of the 60s and all of that, right?
Yeah.
That kind of conservative family-based 1950s era turned into a whole different variety of positions and opinions in the 60s and 70s when the boomers were kind of in their prime.
That's right. So those are some interesting facts to know about some defining things. Like for fun, their defining toy was the Frisbee. Of course, they're consuming their media mostly, yes, at the theater, but the TV became a really big deal in the family living room.
Yep.
Then. And these things called audio cassettes were actually invented in 1962.
Wow.
So I don't think they were as widely adopted as they were in our generation.
Started with the 8-track.
Started with the 8-track.
I think at Columbia House, right? All the Columbia House things where you could get it on 8-track or cassette.
Don't get me started on Columbia
House. For just a
penny,
you could get all this music that now
for
you
just
have
a penny,
to pay
you can
for.
ruin your credit because you didn't know
because you never paid. You never bought the other 5 records you were supposed to get, or 8-tracks, whatever they were. That's hilarious.
Oh my
goodness. So
goodness.
the boomers are kind of known for a couple things too. Like I think of them as these guys are like work ethic driven grinders, and like I think success at the office was really important to this generation. They were kind of super driven. And then there were leaders. They became like really confident, bold leaders, like Enneagram 8 generation. I think the boomers were like of that.
Number.
Yeah. They're kind of super driven.
Yeah, absolutely. They are described as preferring a transactional kind of leadership or an autocratic leadership. So they respect authority and the lines of authority and decision making coming from the top. And, valuing stability and valuing experience, those kinds of things. We see that for sure.
And there's a little bit of crossover into Gen X, which we're going to next, but boomers tend to be competitive and Xers too. Like we're the last 2 generations where everybody didn't get a trophy.
Yeah.
Right. And so like you either won or you lost. And as parents of these younger generations, they don't necessarily, they're not known for having the most like compassion on a kid.
Yeah.
Right. Because I'll let you go to Xers next and then maybe we can get to that.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead to Gen X.
Yeah, sure.
Which is so often just overlooked altogether.
It's my favorite
Can
generation.
we complain about that for a second?
Yeah, we can. I mean, you and I have talked through the years about how wouldn't it be fun if we could just have our own podcast about Gen X? But maybe there wouldn't be as many listeners because we're small.
Music, all the things were so great. Even the sitcoms, it was all the best with Gen X.
Yes.
We may be a little biased there.
And, there are things like Gen X had the reputation of being slackers back in the day, but we turned into really, really hard workers.
Yeah.
And, we had
And also tough, like a thick skin generally for Gen Xers.
Yeah. Short childhood. Meaning we grew up fast.
A lot of latchkey kids because our boomer parents
That's the
were
identifying
both working
feature is that the latchkey kid, and even if you weren't a latchkey kid, and I always have to give the disclaimer that when we're talking about these generations, if you're like, well, that wasn't me. Well, these are broad strokes.
Generalizations.
They are generalizations.
About generations.
But the latchkey thing comes up a lot because our boomer parents were often both working, which go back to the boomers. They started breaking some of those traditional roles.
So if you don't know, listeners, if you don't know what a latchkey kid is, like it was really normal when we were kids that you would have a 4th grader or a 5th grader who would wear a piece of string around their neck with a key to the house on the string. Yeah. My friend Jimmy Matthews, he wore a key on a piece of like a shoelace tied around his neck with a key on it because when he got home, his parents weren't there. He let himself in the house and they said, go inside and lock the door and don't come out until we get home.
That's right.
And that was the latchkey, right?
Yeah.
They went home and we either did our homework or watched TV. But that was that was normal. And if you think now how things have changed, Gen X was like raised by the opposite of helicopter parents. Our parents were
totally hands off,
busy.
and so the research that I've done would tell you that Anxious Generation and other books that are and other research that's telling us about the state of Gen Z and Gen Alpha is not only a technology thing. It's the isolation and all of that is not the only story is not just technology. It's also, it's kind of a 1-2 punch. Gen X overcorrected for being the latchkey generation. We loved at the time being, footloose and fancy free and not overly parented. But then it kind of occurred to us. We grew up fast because of that. But then we elongated a adolescence. And then as we got married, we delayed growing up.
Yeah.
And then once we did, get married, have kids. We did not want them to be
Right,
raised that
so,
way.
like, the Gen
I
X-
would never do what my parents did to me and leave me home all afternoon by myself.
by yourself.
So then what did we do? This pendulum swings the other way, and we start over protecting. Helicopter parent. That's where that comes in. Another dynamic that happened during our youth is that 24-hour cable news cycle came out, and we were aware of all the bad things happening in the world 24 hours a day. Now I know the internet, made that even worse.
Now it's even worse.
But we knew that there could be a chance that a white van might roll up in the front yard and offer your child candy and then kidnap them and drive away.
Right.
Because it happened maybe twice.
We were the generation that had faces of missing kids on milk
Facing
cartons.
of missing
right?
kids on
But
milk cartons.
we didn't wear seatbelts. We didn't have bike
Yeah,
helmets. Like all
exactly.
those things were Xers kind of introduced to overprotect and wrap our kids in bubble wrap because we didn't have any of that.
So I know we're going to talk about Gen Alpha, but Gen Alpha is the safest, physically safest generation ever.
But emotionally?
But emotionally not.
Right.
So anyway.
So we were not a very safe generation as Xers in terms of the physical, right? We would put a board against a curb and jump bikes off of it and break our arms all the time, regularly.
Yeah. But we were not going to allow our kids to do that.
But it's a generation that became self-sufficient and that became strong because of some of those things. And that's both good and bad. So then we moved to the millennial generation, which has a different reputation.
And we love our millennial parents. A lot of them are in the parenting journey. A lot of them are the parents of our Gen Alpha kids. You and I, we're Gen X and we have Gen Z kids.
Yes.
And there's some crossover there, of course. But millennials, of course, are known for their being digital and social media natives. The internet came out in their youth. Social media came out when they were younger. And because of that, they have a lot of giftedness in being able to, like, oftentimes at Lifeway, we'll call on a millennial before we call on a fellow Gen X or Boomer to help us with.
Well, and they tend to be independent thinkers and independent workers, self-motivated. There's a lot of really great things about our millennial friends.
Highly educated, self-confident, sometimes get the reputation of being entitled. That's where some of that language came in.
Yeah, or kind of hoping to advance quickly, where in previous generations we had a posture that we think we had to put in a lot of years before we would be considered for promotions. Our millennials tend to be more upwardly mobile, and where we talk back about that silent generation sticking with one company for years and years, it's not uncommon for the millennial generation to be climbers, where they'll move from company to company to company to find advancement after advancement. So they're a little bit more self-motivated about their advancement maybe than loyal to that one company for 50 years.
Yeah, exactly. And the leadership styles that they're more used to are more of a guiding kind of effect, whether that's in the workplace or even in church structure, things like that. They're more used to that than the hierarchical that we've talked about with the other older generations. So that's something that we as leaders need to remember.
For sure. Yeah. So our boomers and silent generation may be more drawn to just tell me what you want me to do and I'll do it. Our Xers kind of tend to say, don't tell me what to do. Just let me figure it out.
Give me a lot of autonomy.
Right.
X is known for being, give me autonomy. I'm independent. I'll, get it done.
Where with our millennial friends, they need to understand the purpose of what they're doing because they're really drawn to a sense of purpose.
Right.
And if they understand why this is so valuable, they'll get on board and bring a whole lot of energy to being a part of something that's meaningful. But if we have something that's just an obligation to them, that's not quite as appealing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, then we move into the kids who are now in our student and children's ministries, Gen Z and Alpha.
Yeah, and I know you've talked a lot about Gen Z and Alpha, so we don't have to really unpack a bunch of traits here. And knowing that this is who we're ministering to. And the parents of these two generations are who we're talking about. How do we help equip them as their parenting?
Yeah.
And so it's important for us to stay up to speed, which is why I'm so glad you're doing the ETCH podcast, because it really is dedicated to helping us know how to reach Gen Alpha and Gen Z. You know, I think it's fun to talk about, like, my kids are Gen Z. They're the Hallmark toy for their generation. You want to guess what it would be?
For Gen Z?
Yeah.
It's some kind of handheld video game.
Actually, Gen Z, remember, got to have a little bit of
pre-digital,
of a pre-smartphone, you know, childhood. My
what's the
kids were
toy?
obsessed with the folding Razor scooters.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
Yes.
so that's kind of their toy.
I thought of that as a mode of transportation, not so much a toy.
Both,
Okay,
I guess. Spotify is their music consumption,
Yes.
whereas Millennials, I forgot to say, was the iPod.
iPods.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then, of course, the device is how they consume their media. You know, Gen Z loves their YouTube videos, things like that.
They're dude perfect people.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But early on, they're some of the first pioneers. And then Alpha, fidget spinner is their noteworthy toy.
Well, I still like those.
Huh?
I like those.
Yeah,
like I need something to fidget
need
with.
those.
I do.
Yeah, those are great. They have smart speakers for their music consumption. They can just say, "Hey Google" or Alexa, or play this, play that. So that.
And these are kids for whom screens were pacifiers when they were little,
Yes.
right? This is the little one that you saw in the shopping cart at the grocery store who had an iPad that was doing that, and that's how they kept them entertained and out of trouble.
Yep, and used to
Digital natives
streaming their media. So yeah, those are just, that's a flyby.
great high level thing.
Yeah.
So this is so important because as we lead in our ministries and we work with a wide variety of volunteers, we can't just communicate going back to your hat, in a one size fits all style. We need to adjust our styles to hit the broadest group, and we may need to cater our styles to different volunteers when we have an understanding of how they like to be led and how they like to communicate. So tell us a little bit about some of those things. How does these insights, how do they become practical for us as we lead ministries?
And I think that's really important because, you can have a lot of fun figuring out all these different traits and historical context of why we are the way we are in our different age groups. But what are the key takeaways of what we as next gen leaders need to know is we are touching every generation of our church. Yeah. So one takeaway that I want to call out is we need to still prioritize in-person gatherings. Okay. And here's why. When we really drill down and ask each of the generations how they want to keep up with the people that matter most to them, every single one of them prioritized in-person, face-to-face meetings. And so when you think, well, these younger generations, they don't have time. They don't want to meet. They don't want to, come to trainings in person.
Right.
They do.
But when you ask them about it, they really prefer in person.
Yes. When you really drill down to it, that's how they want to keep up with people that mean something to them. And so the church offers that. So I'm talking about your church in general needs to prioritize that, but you and your ministry need to prioritize bringing people in and pouring into them in person.
I'll tell you something. So that is a great takeaway. You can't beat in person. Nothing is better than face-to-face in person for communication. You get all the body language and all the, you can read someone's face. If they kind of wrinkle their brow when you say something, they may not understand you. You lose all of that in a text or an email or some other way. Yeah. The other thing that I kind of know, and I don't know that we have the data on this, so this is just you and me anecdotally. Okay. There's a lot of people who really don't like a phone call. Yeah. Like we have some friends who are like, I will text you, I'll meet you face to face, but please don't call me. Yeah. I think when the phone rings,
my children won't even set up their voicemail.
Right. Well, yeah. So although we call it a phone, it's really a texter in a lot of cases, right? Our phones are, but there's a lot of people who don't like phone calls. And so for me as a Gen Xer, I don't love the phone call. I know that a lot of my millennial friends, if I call them as their boss, as their leader, they immediately think something is terrible. Something's wrong. There's a disaster, right? Because otherwise you would just text me. Right. And so we need to be careful of what we're unintentionally communicating. Now, the other thing that I've learned through experience, Jana, is there was a season when we were at a very small church that was a little bit older. I was a deacon there. And they wanted every one of us to make phone calls to everybody on the call list on a quarterly basis.
Yeah.
That was really awkward for me, but because so many of them were silent generation and greatest generation people, they really appreciated the phone call in a different way.
Yeah.
So having that understanding.
Knowing who prefers what kind of communication. And, if we had time, we could kind of go into that. But my point here is that we still need to prioritize in person, because at the end of the day, they know they need it and they want it from the church. Another stat to support this is when we drill down and ask each of the generations what they think the purpose of a church's physical space is. They all agree that it needs to be a place to provide spiritual growth.
Okay.
So we want to leverage that and say, okay, we're going to use this building not just for services, but we're going to bring people in to continue developing them, to continue pouring into them spiritually, relationally. So much of this goes back to relationships.
Yeah.
So, so one big key takeaway for all the generations, we all need it. Prioritize
in person. Doesn't mean it's the only way to communicate, but we must incorporate that face-to-face.
Yes.
Yep.
Which leads right into a second one for me: incorporate intergenerational discipleship. So here you have all these generations.
Yes.
How do we get those generations to help develop one another?
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's no better place than Next Gen Ministry to do that, because, again, you have access to all of them. And so how do we do that? We know that some of our younger generations, Millennial and Gen Z especially, highly value progress in their spiritual life. They want to be developed. They want their spiritual gifts to be developed.
Yeah.
And they identify with their spiritual gifts, some more so than maybe our older generations.
Yes.
They want to know what they are, and then how can I develop them? And so how can we leverage that even in I'll use children's ministry as an example, knowing that somebody could potentially have a teaching gift. Well, let me bring you in. Yeah. Let me give you the opportunity to shadow this older leader. And watch them. Watch Miss Carolyn, who is a silent generation at my church, who is master teacher.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that she has younger teachers in her classroom that watch her, learning from her, and she will pass that torch to them. She's developing them.
And we need to be intentional about those relationships and connections as leaders, right? Because we can often get someone in to fill a need that we have, and we're not thinking about developing them or discipling them as just in their spiritual walk in general, or as a leader.
Right.
Such a great thing to do is to get the older generations to invest in the younger.
Yes. Now, speaking of the older generations, though, statistics tell us that many of our older generations say they are not being discipled. So I don't know what that is. If we really drill down to it, is it that they feel like they've arrived and they don't need to go anymore, discipleship classes or that kind of thing? But I think that's something that we need to keep an eye on, and maybe it's something that we can influence from our chair and say, hey, in children's ministry, in student ministry, we're going to pour into you and make sure that you're being discipled so that you can pour into others and disciple them.
And sometimes that's spiritual discipling, but it can also be coaching, advising them and how to be a good leader. Training is an important thing that I think there's a generation of leaders, or multiple generations, I should say, who are really looking to us to help train them and teach them and invest in them. Let's not be leaders who just hand them a piece of paper and say, read the lesson, but let's teach them about the kids. And I just did a training this last week in Paducah, Kentucky. There were so many people at this church at Lone Oak up there. Hey guys, good to hear you, or hopefully you're hearing me. Shout out to you. Where there were couples who were older couples who've been serving for 20 years plus with third graders, fourth graders, eighth graders. But they're very open to say, please teach me so I can do this better. Yeah. And I think a lot of times, if we are younger leaders, if you're a millennial leader, don't hesitate to encourage and coach and advise your older teachers. Yeah. In most cases, they are really opening and really want to hear advice and get guidance, not just be left alone.
Yeah, absolutely. Something else that I think is key, a key takeaway, is that we need to mobilize around mission. And I think we can all agree that our mission ultimately is the Great Commission,
Right.
which is to share the gospel. And so sadly, statistically, many groups have done this research. Lifeway Research came out with a study that basically asks among Protestant churchgoers, okay, so most of the people listening to us, Protestant churchgoers,
Yes.
right? That's a broad category. And when asked in the past 6 months, how many times did you share with someone how to become a Christian? Most people said 0.
Yeah. Really small.
The next percentage, 14% said 1 to 2. And then it just basically none.
Yeah.
So what do we do with that when we are called? Jesus' last words to us, go make disciples.
Right.
And here we are in the church and we're not sharing the gospel
Yeah.
in our everyday lives. So evangelism has become just a lower and lower priority when you really do the research to see who's sharing their faith.
We could do a whole other episode, and maybe we should, about evangelism trends by generation. Right, there's the generation that did evangelism explosion, and everybody learned how to recite that. But that's changed over the generations with openness in the culture of people to hear what we have to say, and the confidence that we have to boldly share. And I think you're right. I think the trend is that we're just not doing it by and large.
So what an opportunity that is for next gen leaders to invite people in to not only practice sharing their faith, but a lot of times people aren't sharing their faith because they don't feel trained.
They don't feel comfortable or confident with it. That's right.
So we can train them and we can give them lots of opportunities to do it with children. Teenagers.
Right. And so may those statistics not be true of those who serve in our ministries, right? Because as we serve in preschool children, middle school, high school ministry, we need to make the gospel a core part of what we're sharing, not just once a summer at VBS. We can't save the gospel for special occasions. We need to have don't even think about gospel presentation in the old school way, but more about gospel conversations. And we have to equip every leader at every level in next gen ministry to be comfortable talking through the gospel. We provide them with a construct, whether it's the gospel God's plan or 3 circles or something like that, and get your people comfortable sharing that. And when we do, kids need to hear the gospel. We need to be able to talk it and share it. And it absolutely needs to be a central part of what we do because there is urgency. We need to keep that sense of urgency in our next gen ministries.
Yes, absolutely. So that's something that we can influence from our seat. And speaking of urgency, let's maybe even close with this one because I think it's huge. So we need to generate urgency around ministry to Gen Z and Gen Alpha. That is a call not only to those of us who are in next gen ministry, it is a call to the whole church.
Yes.
Everybody's eyes needs to be on this. It is an urgent situation. And so how do we, from our seat, be able to lead up and out to our congregations, to our leaderships, to say, we've got to be in this all together and understand what Gen Z and Gen Alpha is up against, what these parents are up against, and how do we mobilize our whole church to wrap around this?
Yeah.
So a quote that has really sort of haunted me recently is from Alex Kendrick, who, if you're not familiar with who he is, he's one of the producers of the Kendrick Brothers
filmmaker, Fireproof, and all the movies.
War Room.
The Forge is the new one. Yep.
He recently said, "Whoever wants the next generation the most will win them." And so my question for all of us is, does the church want them the most?
Yeah.
And we've got to answer that, and we've got to mobilize the entire church for that cause.
Because the culture wants them.
That's
the
right.
enemy wants them.
That's right.
And we need to realize that although kids in student ministry are fun, it's not a game. It's a very serious matter that we need to take the gospel to this generation. They need to know Jesus. And that's our work. Jana, thank you so much. This is so fascinating. I love it. I know that our conversation could go on and on and on,
Yes,
but
yes.
unfortunately we can't just do that. But otherwise we could talk all afternoon. But I love the insights about understanding how different generations think and operate, different background they have and experiences that they have. Listeners, I would encourage you to do your own research on this. Jana shared several resources early on that she has cited, some books to look into, but there's a lot of information out there that can help you understand the generations that you work with and that you're trying to reach. And so look into that, take it seriously, and then apply some of these really practical ideas about how you communicate and how you interact and how you motivate. I think the way we communicate and the way we motivate is really key as leaders. And let's be careful that we don't just do things the way that we are personally comfortable with because of our own experiences and our own generational preferences, but that we lead well across the span of generations as we seek to reach Gen Z and Generation Alpha with the gospel. Jana, thank you so much. This was really fun.
This was fun. Yes, it was.
I'm so glad to have you and to be able to do this again together. Let's come up with another topic and do this again soon.
Absolutely.
The Glass House is a production of Lifeway, executive produced by Angie Elkins, edited and engineered by Donnie Gordon. Show notes and social media by Nikki Ogden, photography, Emily Bergeron and Bailey Watley. Recorded at the Lifeway Podcast Studio in Brentwood, Tennessee.